Hello and welcome to another review. This time something a little bit more exotic. H0 scale model of one of the most sophisticated diesel locomotive, 5000 horsepower, 6-axle diesel hydraulic Voith Maxima. And what is making this model so special is not necessarily only the general appearance, which is clearly unusual, but also the way how the model was executed and designed, especially inside. This is one of the super premium models on the market. And it's not necessarily newest model either. It's been released a few years ago by a small independent company called Saechsische Waggonfabrik Stollberg. This model is available in limited distribution and is kind of on and off, and it's kind of a little bit hard to find on the market. From a price point standpoint of view, before we get into the model, and I want to talk about the price because that's going to be very important and relevant to the rest of the presentation, is the model is priced in Europe anywhere between 299 euros for DC version to 399 euros for the version with decoder and sound. So anywhere in between 350 to 500 US dollars, clearly priced as a premium product. Same type of packaging as the LS models and Sud Express. 51-page long manual, very important, we'll talk about it later on. And the model is packaged like this, covered with very nice cleaning cloth with the SWS logo on it. Yeah, and that's the locomotive. So clearly a premium execution of packaging. You have pouches with small parts, quite few of them, and that's going to be quite interesting part of the presentation as well. So what makes this model so special? First of all, obviously, is the appearance. Let's face it, there is nothing like it on the tracks anywhere probably around the globe that looks equally unusual than this locomotive, and either you love it or you hate it. Secondly is, and probably the most important part, is the execution of the drive. Voith Maxima is built with 16-cylinder diesel engine and a split output hydraulic transmission, which is located somewhere in the central part of the locomotive, transferring the mechanical energy below frame level, and then both of the tracks are connected with universal shafts and joints, and then each axle has individual gearbox powering each axles. And surprisingly enough, this model is designed exactly the same way. So you have the gearbox here, two shafts connecting each tracks or bogies, and then you have a micro gearboxes on each axle. Another interesting part is also the suspension and the pivoting points. This is very interesting, very prototypical execution with working suspension. The controls are designed very interesting way as well, and the designers took the modular approach to build this model with the interface for the decoder, and then you can add different modules to upgrade the model to different functions. So we'll take a look at it as well. In addition to being already very well detailed straight from the factories, you have also a lot of small parts. My estimate is just like about 2 hours of time to spend on the bench if you want to install them all. The manual will give you directions how to dress up the locomotive, and as you can see, there's a lot. Everything from the antennas to windshield wipers, electrical connectors. All of these elements here are pressed in. You can configure them different way, of course, the different type of plows. Majority of these small parts are for upgrades to suspension and side frames, and there are 6 pages in the manual dedicated to configuration of suspension and some of the small parts just on the side frames alone. Some photo etched elements. Right here, these are the steps that needs to be installed here on the corners. Additional set of front guards. The one on the top is the full size prototypical. The one on the bottom, you can see there's a small space cut out for a coupler, and this is the one I have installed here. Very limited movement here. However, on the other side, there's also, of course, an option for a plow with space for the coupler to move full swing. And you can see the cutout right here. All the front parts here are pressed in, not glued in. They are very easy to remove, and actually you can see the pins here on the top. There isn't much to talk about on the rooftop until you reach this area here, the exhaust fans and the radiators. I really like the photo-etched covers for the radiators. However, I'm not really a big fan of the metallic finish. I'm not quite sure if this is prototypically correct and not for this price range. You can see on the side here, this grill seems to be photo-etched as well, painted, and they look right away completely different. The fan supports, or whatever they are here, these little elements, they look quite cheap and plastic, and so are the exhausts. Another thing I spotted while looking at the model and inspecting the roofline are these parallel grooves here. I don't know how well you can see them. This is either from mold and the machining, or something went wrong with the paint. And they're not really that difficult to spot. They are actually quite visible. Overall, the paint quality and execution of all the small markings, as you can see here, is very good. One of the other things that I'm not necessarily quite impressed with, again, in this price range, is the execution of some of the railings here. They should be painted to the same paint scheme as the background yellow. And the kind of raw metal wires are looking a little bit out of place. Very nice looking front. Unfortunately, again, you cannot not notice this inexpensive, probably out of scale windshield wipers. And just to compare, a couple of recently reviewed models, Saechsische, Maxima and Rocco. You can see the photo etched windshield wipers on Rocco. Same thing here on Saechsische model, very small, very delicate. The side frames and the execution of suspension is absolutely fantastic, with a lot of deep 3D molded parts, and that's before even application of all the small parts. One of the exciting features of this model is the execution, the prototypical execution of the suspension between the bogies and the chassis. You can see the sliding plates here, they're spring loaded. And then the sliding plates are moving. Amazing. On page 50, inside the provided manual, there's a separate couple of sentences explaining and the drawing explaining the principles of the suspension system for this locomotive. The model is also equipped with very interesting and prototypical, of course, pivoting and guiding system, which is right here. You can see the 3 micro gearboxes for each axles, and then the guiding and pivoting system is right here. Fantastic piece of engineering in H0 scale. Well, the model is already open, obviously. There's nothing really, not much to it. 4 locks is a classic industry standard snap-on shell. And the locks are in 4 locations here, here, and opposite side, another 2. And a quick look inside the engineer's cab. Let's talk about the most exciting feature of this model, the drive. So, large bueller right here with 1 flywheel on one side and connected to gearbox on the opposite side. And just like in the original, the mechanical energy and the RPMs are transferred below the deck level or the frame via gearbox, which in original is the hydraulic transmission. And then, as you can see, a couple of shafts and universal joints powering both of the tracks or bogies, and individual micro gearboxes on each axle. The gearboxes are connected, and that's exactly how the locomotive is powered in original. What can I say? The complexity of this mechanism is absolutely amazing, and the amount of engineering and design that was dedicated to execute this to this level of prototypical accuracy is absolutely amazing. All 6 axles are powered, all 6 axles are picking up electrical current. You can see the rail deep there, there's a brass element, which are the pickups, the electrical pickups. Because of the unique design of the drive, where most of the mechanical components are below the frame, there's a tons of space left in the locomotive for installation of additional electronics and sound modules, if you wish. There's a huge space here. There's a whole big empty space here. This is the DCC model without the sound, and the model arrived with Uhlenbrock 22 plugs decoder. This is the standard 22 plugs interface, so if you decide to replace your decoder, you can. Now the interesting story is that you can buy additional modules to add the sound to this locomotive, and the original control is designed to be modular, which means you can have just the DCC decoder controlling motor and lights, and then there's an interface where you can buy from Uhlenbrock separate sound modules and speakers, which will go somewhere here or here, and the sound module will take the digital output from the decoder and control the sound alone. There is no sound for this locomotive available on the market except from the SWS, or the maker of this locomotive, as far as I know. Theoretically, the specific sound modules are available. Unfortunately, I was unable to get in touch with anyone. I tried the combi model, and then I was unable to locate one. So I decided to just simply switch the decoder. So the Uhlenbrock is unfortunately going out, and this is SU4, which will just perfectly fit here, and then the whole speaker is going right in here very comfortably. And let's talk about the lights. Everything so far inside this model is quite sophisticated and complex compared to most of the models available on the market. And the same stories with the light controls and light systems. So let's start from the top. Top headlight LED model is equipped with interior lights as well, which is on the opposite side of the circuit board here. 3 micro LEDs on each side here. 2 for regular white lights, 2 for high beams warm white, and 2 for red markers. There is also machine room illumination, which is illuminating this area here. There are 4 LEDs here in this area under the circuit board, and this is the radiators area, which is also used in original locomotive as part of the passage for the crew to move between cabins, and you can see the running board executed here. There's 2 sets of doors in original locomotive. It's actually quite a cool looking feature, and once I have the shell back on, I'll demonstrate. I will keep the original Uhlenbrock decoder for the lights and the functions demonstration. The top shell is pretty much as easy as just click on. There are 8 pages dedicated to lights control and basic function controls in user manual. On page 8 and 9, at the beginning of the chapter, there's a list of all common DCC systems. You can find one of the stations you are using or controller you are using on your layout or in-house, and find out what is the range of functions for different controller and how many functions are available for your command station. This locomotive is in service in several European countries, and one of the interesting options, as you can find here in manual on page 12 and 13, is the ability to switch to country-specific headlights aspects. What you can do is you have to locate your number, your cutout number of your model. Then you have a list of countries, and you select the cross-reference. For example, Sweden is number 4. You go to CV33, program CV33 to number 4, and that will lock the headlight system and the light control system to display Swedish railroad specific headlights aspects. And you can see on this side here that here's Sweden, and here's the explanation on some of the key aspects cross-referenced with functions 0, 5, 4, 3 and F9. Quite impressive. Headlights, high beam, white, warm, directional red lights, which can be switched off, of course, at any time. You can activate them or deactivate. Directional cab lights. I don't know if you can see, but there's quite a bit of light bleeding inside the cab with the high beam lights activated. If you decide to replace the factory installed Uhlenbrock decoder for a different one, you will most likely have to remap and reprogram all light functions. Let's talk about the digital interface and the decoder interface for a few more minutes. The reason why you will have to reprogram your light outputs if you decide to replace the decoder is because this model is equipped with so-called SUSI interface, and I believe it stands for Serial User Standard Interface, which is rarely used by the model industry unless you get into like high premium, highly complex models with a lot of prototypical functions. So what it is pretty much is like secondary decoder with some of the basic functions pre-programmed already on board. So in this case, the railroad specific light combinations are pre-programmed already on board, and then this chip here is using the main decoder just to tell which of the functions to turn on and decides which combination of LEDs is going to be activated. So it's pretty much like an extension of function extensions for your main decoder. Okay, so in short, can I replace the decoder? Will it work? Will it not? Maybe yes. Yes, it will work. You can replace the decoder. This is standard 22-pin DCC interface, so any of the 22-pin decoders will work. What will happen, however, is if you don't trigger the interface, you will have to use the functions available from your main decoder and map them to some of the specific outputs and lights in the locomotive. Most likely you will run out of functions of your decoder before you map all the potential capabilities of this model, and in most cases you won't be probably able to use or access all of the sophisticated and complex functions for some of the specific railroad industries. Yeah, a little bit complicated. And two more quick things before we go for drive test. The suspension. We were talking about the suspension, spring shear and the prototypical execution. Once you install the body, you can see the sag on the suspension. Very nice. Quick disclaimer on DCC controls, quick reminder. I already replaced the original decoder with ESU. I wasn't impressed with the performance of this model on low RPMs and low speed with neither of the decoders. So the ESU that is installed in here is already modified. I switched the controls to 128 speed steps. I reduced the maximum speed by about 30-40%. The model was running way too fast. And I ran the automatic back EMF adjustment. There's a very nice, high quality, large Bueller motor installed in this model. Absolutely fantastic performance at low speed, as you can see. However, once you get to about this speed step 40, there's some noise coming out of the drive. You can hear the clocking. The model sounds like it's derailed, but it's not. I was unable to pinpoint 100% the root cause of that strange clicking noise. I think it's related to all the multiple micro gearboxes on both bogies, all 6 of them. I watched several other videos, people presenting these models on the layouts, and I noticed several of them with exactly same symptom. Alright, in conclusion / my personal opinion, I think this is very unique and interesting model for at least 2 reasons. One is probably one of the most unique looking locomotive out there. Secondly, the drive, suspension and the execution of the pivot mechanism. Correct me if I am wrong, but I strongly believe that this is the most prototypically accurate execution of diesel locomotive drive in H0 scale amongst the commercially available models, of course, period. Therefore, I have nothing but appreciation and huge level of respect for SWS designers for delivering such innovative model. Unfortunately, despite all the sophistications and advancements, I'm disappointed for 3 key reasons. Number 1, with exception of finishing the side frame, suspension and the bogies, is the overall finishing and the small detail. Starting with the unfortunate groove lines on the roof side, followed by heavy execution of windshield wipers, you cannot not notice them, and cheap looking finishing of the rooftop details. Number 2, the overall complexity of DCC controls and the interface. The initial idea of a heavy modular approach to DCC control was fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anyone in mainstream industry supporting this kind of approach anymore. I was unable to locate the sound module with original Maxima recordings as advertised by SWS, and eventually ended up replacing the entire decoder. According to Uhlenbrook's website, you can still buy the sound module expansions in Europe for their system. Unfortunately, I was unable to locate the original sound file for Maxima anywhere except for SWS, and they are not responding. The SUSI interface with pre-programmed country-specific headlight aspects and emergency signals, personally I have a very little to none use for it. And the interface is adding additional layer of complexity to already complex model. And finally, number 3 is the drive. Even with the sound decoder activated, I can still hear that clicking, knocking noise coming up randomly as the model is running around the layout. Overall drive performance is very good. Low speed performance is fantastic. Therefore, I don't believe there's anything mechanically wrong with the drive. It's probably just the noisy nature of this complex drive design. And let's add the total cost to the full picture, which is at this point $530, included the new decoder and shipping. I've tried to contact SWS at multiple occasions with questions related to drive performance and the expansion modules. They never responded to any of my messages. I ended up talking to a hobby shop in Germany where I purchased this model, and I received significant refund because of the drive performance. Well, this is one long review. I hope you are still there and watching, and I hope at least some of it was helpful. Happy model railroading, and thank you very much.